What's going on, guys? It's me, Rich, and this is Chris Cantwell. All right, guys, welcome Chris Cantwell to the show. Chris, what's going on, dude?
Hey, how are you? How's it going, Rich?
It's going well. How about yourself in sunny California?
Yeah. We finally got our sun. We I live about 50 miles east of Los Angeles, so we have had the like marine layer, you know, awful grayness. But I mean,
Mm.
I'm happy with that just because it's sunny 300 days of the year here, so it makes it a little cooler. And now that it's sunny in the morning, it's already up to like 90 something degrees during the day. So
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
big no thank you for me.
yeah, yeah.
If it's over 66, it's too hot to handle for this guy.
Yes.
um,
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like 70, 73, no humidity, which is what we get out here. I think
mhm.
it's perfect. But we have so much gray weather where it's like we don't just have June gloom, we have April, we have gray May, we have June gloom, we have gray sky July, and then August. So we have
like,
all of those.
like August.
August. Yeah.
Dude, there's so much I want to talk to you about. I also have to stop myself from nerding out a bit because you've written some of my favorite books in the past like couple of years.
No, thank
Um,
you.
but let's jump into Blue Flame. I
Yeah.
actually Adam Gorham actually sent me a advanced preview PDF of it. I got to read
Oh,
it.
cool.
It's
Awesome.
it's he was on the show a couple of months ago. Talk to me, man. Like Vault Comics, you, Adam Gorham, Blue Flame. I really enjoyed the first issue, and it has
Yeah.
one of my favorite things in comics. It had that really grab you ending.
Oh, good. Awesome. Yeah, it's a really special book. I'm really proud of the way it turned out. I'm so excited to work with Adam and then additionally Kurt and then Haas. And I mean, like it's just some of the best of the best in terms of the group on the book. And then to work with an editor like Adrian is fantastic. My litmus test for a creative partner who's not a writer, or directly generating whatever we're working on is that how well do they give thoughts or feedback or even notes on
Mhm.
something that the artist has done, and uh, Adrian has such a really smart story sense to him. I mean, he's just he's brilliant. I could tell very quickly, just in when he gave me some initial feedback on the concept almost 2 years ago at this point, um, how smart he was when it came to story sense. And that's such a unique and very nuanced gift to be able to understand story, convey ideas about story and opinions, and also, but then, not actually be doing the writing. I've only worked with a few people that have been able to do that. And more so in comics than maybe television and film, but he's really special. And then Vault, just as a whole, the whole apparatus is pretty impressive. I mean, him and Damien, what they've created, what they've built out there in Montana, and I mean, I can't tell you the last time I didn't have a Vault book on my pull list at my shop. So I just feel really really happy to be with them with this book, because you know it's a personal story in that um, it's really about the struggle between having hope and being hopeless and losing that hope, right? And in the face of insurmountable odds, whether that be, what we see in the news cycle every day, what we have going on in our own personal lives, whatever it is, there's always that kind of fundamental threat to any sense of hope or resilience that we have within us. And I think that concept is center to being a superhero and then also a human being, right? So it's those things that, um, to me, I resonate with in work that I read and work that I respond to. And then when I approach most of my writing, it's a lot of it is centered in that idea. And so this is really my first kind of, I think, my first kind of creator owned quote unquote superhero story. But that theme is front and center in the book for sure.
So, I mean, judging by the last year and a half, I think, this story definitely has its time, and the time is now. And like you said, you put a lot of yourself into it, even though it's like a superhero book, the human side of it definitely comes across like very strong, you know, like it kind of starts out with like your very classic Silver Age comic book style, you know, and then it goes into that the meeting of the heroes, which I felt like is very human. There's a lot of like interpersonal relationships that's happening that, you know, like during that like appearance at the auto show. And
Mhm.
then that, I'm not going to spoil the ending for anybody who hasn't read it, but like that ending also, like you're heartbroken and curious at the same time,
Yeah.
you know. And I feel
Yeah.
like being heartbroken and curious is, you know, like that really kind of identifies the last year and a half, you know, of
Yeah.
existence, you know.
Yeah. And it's funny because I mean, this is an idea that I think I had even before that, right? This was in 2019
Mhm.
that I came up with this. I think in the late fall, just but it was in the face of everything that's been going on even before the pandemic. Um, but I wanted to tell that story that was bifurcated into these two lenses. One is the cosmic, and one is the kind of mundane, um, and have the emotional stakes feel the same, right? Which is either we've got to save all of humanity, or we just have to work on saving ourselves and not losing ourselves to the darkness. And usually those things go hand in hand, and they feel of equal weight and importance in our own psyches. So that is really the trailhead for the book is in the face of what is life, the universe, and everything, to quote Douglas Adams, right? How do we survive, us individually and then us collectively?
Right on, man. And you know, reading your work, whether it be Blue Flame or everything, Doctor Doom, Iron Man, you know, like I personally think that when I look at that and I look at your social media feed, I'm like, this dude loves comic books.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I always appreciate that out of creators, because you know what, like sometimes you meet guys who are jaded, that love is long gone, you know. But like just reading your stuff, I'm like, oh, this dude loves comics. Like, have you been a lifelong fan?
I have um gosh, I got my first comic book from my dad. I don't remember how old I was, but we were camping out in Tyler, Texas. I grew up in North Texas,
Mhm.
in the Dallas area, and he took me out camping out near Tyler. And on the way back, we stopped at a convenience store, and he picked me up an issue of Marvel Tales featuring Spider-Man. And in the issue, he fights Rain, the werewolf, right, Wolfsbane,
Mhm.
and I read that issue like just, I don't know, dozens of times as a kid, and that was my entry point in. And I actually still have that book. I'm gesturing over here because my like 5 boxes of important comics are over here in plastic cases, but in my bedroom. Only in my bedroom because I had to close out my office. I just want to say my wife's not first choice is to not have giant comic book boxes in our bedroom. But yeah, and then from there, as I kind of got older, and you start to straddle the lines between childhood and adolescence, and that kind of tough, awkward crucible that is middle school,
Mhm.
right? And I was an only child as well, so I found a lot of solace in those books, and around that time, Jim Lee's X-Men was starting, and Bone was going, and you had the Clone Saga and some of these other kind
Mhm.
of big 90s events, and you had Nightfall, and you had Death of Superman, and you had some books that were taking a lot of the things I loved as a kid, right? Which is like watching Super Friends, or
Mhm.
watching old cartoons, watching Star Wars, and then doing something totally different with them, right? And or just even just expanding upon them and enriching them in some pretty profound ways. Like, I mean, I'm remembering, even I'm looking at your shirt, your Dark Horse shirt. It's like,
Mhm.
that was right around the time of, it was not just the Timothy Zahn novels, but then like Dark Empire and Dark Empire 2, and some of those really interesting Star Wars books drawn by Cam Kennedy, and like seeing Star Wars in a way that I had never imagined. And getting to experience that at 12, is really special. So, that was huge for me. And then in high school, I was still in it. Obviously, like, you get sucked into your teen years, and I was very much into my car and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
But sometimes I remember I would just go to this one store by my house, called Lone Star Comics and just walk around in my school uniform. I went to an all boys Catholic school for high school. Went to Catholic school my whole life growing up through high school.
Mhm.
And I would just walk around. And even though I didn't really have, a dime to my name, when I was that age, I would just kind of go in there and decompress after a day of school or a day of just, teen angst or whatever. And then I moved out to LA for college. I went to film school out here, went to USC, and that's how I discovered Golden Apple. Like, I think my freshman year, I remember started to drive over to Golden Apple off of Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles, and Heidi Ho in Santa Monica. And yeah, I stuck with it, and I'm older now. And I've got kids but I came back into it probably like 4 years ago with a concept I'd had kind of jangling around in my head for a comic book. And that was something that was just kind of sitting in the back of my mind. And I wasn't reading very much at that time in terms of comics. But I had this idea. I was knee deep in television production and producing and writing and features, and it was a lot. And because of that, I was able to parlay that into, being hooked up with Karen Berger. And from there, I pitched her an idea, and that became She Could Fly. So I kind of came in through the back door, through the front door in a way. And it was really cool.
That was going to be one of my follow-up questions too. Like, cause it seems like, your trajectory, judging by your career, didn't look like it was going to be comic books, like from an outside perspective, so it's really cool that it's like, you're a lifelong fan, and then all of a sudden, you're doing TV production, and then it becomes like, I'm reputable enough to make comic books. And you know what I mean? Like, it's
yes.
like, there's no like,
it was nice. It was cool. I mean, I graduated from film school in 2004, and it took about 7 or 8 years for me to become a professional writer. And that was a really circuitous path. During that time, I was a production coordinator for commercials. I tutored kids in the SAT. I did the assistant thing. I started making videos with friends and short films. But then by 2008, 2009, 2010, I was at a startup that got acquired by the Walt Disney Company, and I was a marketing executive. Wow. I was a marketing executive at Disney, and we were working with business units, and we were doing some fun stuff. And some of it was video based, with Pixar or the parks and things like that. And I got to do some trippy things, but it was very far cry from, what I came out to Los Angeles to do. And that's how I ended up meeting my writing partner at the time, Chris Rogers, as he came to work for the same company. And we worked together for a year before we started writing. And then from there, we sold our pilot, Halt and Catch Fire, to AMC in 2011, and we were off to the races all of a sudden. So yeah, but before that, I almost joined the Coast Guard. It's just a random, kind of path that gets there. It wasn't like I sold a script walking out the door of USC and turned that into something. It was, it's been quite a vivid tapestry. I'll put it that way.
No, I hear you. I definitely hear you. Like it's kind of funny too, because like you hit a lot of notes that are very familiar to me. I went to Catholic high school out here. We're probably the same age. I'm 39. I'm gonna be 40 this year.
Me too. There we go. So 81.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. Happy birthday. Thank you. I'm a July baby. How about you?
I'm a November. I'm a Scorpio.
Okay.
There you go.
Cancer.
Cancer. Done to Cancer.
My wife's a Scorpio though.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Yeah, but so like also went to college for film and television.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
And in like a weird roundabout way, like 10 plus years after I graduate, I start my own photography business, and that's what I'm doing now, like photo and video, which is the stuff I went to school for, because I feel like it's like that weird thing. Like when you're in school, at least for me and my buddies' perspectives, we're all dum-dums. We were like, as soon as we graduate, dude, we're all going to be the next Scorsese. Which,
everybody has the Scarface poster in their freshman dorm. Yeah, I remember the days, the Reservoir Dog posters.
Oh, forget it. Yeah.
That way. Yeah. If you're the same age as me, like you probably had the same posters up. Although I had weird stuff up. I don't know. I feel like I was kind of a jerk in film school. I just had a chip on my shoulder because I had been waitlisted to get in.
Okay.
And then I did get in, and then when I sat down with the rest of my class, I was like, "What are you guys doing here?"
Give me some examples. I want to hear them.
Oh, I'm trying to think. Like Yeah, everybody had the same posters, and look, like,
Hmm.
obviously there's some great movies to have great posters of, but I think I wanted to be a jerk, and I somehow got a poster. I think I got it on eBay. This was back in the day, it'd be like 2001, but I got a poster to put up in my dorm room of the Rocky and Bullwinkle live action film.
Wow. Wow.
Something I'd never even seen. I just wanted to be contrarian and put this up because I knew everybody would have the same. I mean, I was at SC, right? So it was going to be Star Wars, it was going to be this, it was going to be that, it was going to be Back to the Future, all the Spielberg stuff.
Hmm.
So I just decided to put that up. But again, that's more just about me being a asshole teen.
No, I listen. I hear you. Like when we were in it, like it was like me and my buddy were huge Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez guys, and then
Yeah.
because like I have an older brother, so I didn't grow up with him, but he's like that much older than I am. So, but
Mhm.
just watching tons of like flicks with him growing up, and
Mhm.
that kind of influenced like what I was into in film and television production. And
Mhm.
it was just looking back on it now, I'm like, oh, what a jerk. I'm like, listen, guys, can we reenact like this complete episode of like Dark Shadows or Tales from the Dark Side, please, like in my directing class or whatever, And
That's
it's
so
like
great.
met with groans left and right,
You're like, why? Yeah. Oh my
So
God.
but it's kind of interesting. Like your career path is super interesting to me because it's Halt and Catch Fire, comic books, and now you're, correct me if I'm wrong, you're executive producing Paper Girls.
Yes. So yeah, there's obviously been weird stuff, in between. And
Mm.
a couple years ago, I directed my first feature film, which was cool, and I did that up in Canada, and it starred
Mm.
Aaron Paul and a young deaf boy named Danny Murphy, called The Parts You Lose. I didn't write it, but it was quite an experience. And yeah, I've just kind of been bobbing around and doing random things. But Chris and I did come on to Paper Girls um, around October of 2019. We came on after Steph Folsom, who co-wrote Toy Story 3 and Thor 3, and
Mm.
done some amazing work in kind of the Star Wars and Marvel and Pixar wheelhouse over at Disney. Had sold the pitch along with Brian K. Vaughan,
Mm.
and so they brought us in because we were experienced showrunners, which was funny because when we sold *Halt and Catch Fire, they paired us with an experienced showrunner
Mm.
who happened to be the best mentor I could have asked for. So I think that Chris and I really approached Paper Girls in a similar way, and then the pandemic happened, and so shooting was delayed. Um, so we went back and worked on that first season of scripts and made them as best as we could make them. And the writers room is a fantastic group of people. And I think we did a season 2 room while we were waiting to shoot. And ultimately, I mean, just because of you talk about circuitous routes, I've actually stepped away from Paper Girls. I'm still executive producing it, but I'm no longer
Mm.
show running it with Chris and Steph. Just because I think I needed to. I took a second to um, evaluate 10 years in, which is how long it's been. I've been working with Chris since 2010. What exactly do I want to be doing? Right? That to me is
Mm.
a really important question that, if you're afforded the opportunity to be able to ask it of yourself and answer it, it's an essential one. And so I was able to I just had to take stock and go, wait. And one of those things was, I think I backburnered my personal life
Mm.
in some ways. And so ultimately, just because, I mean, there's 3 of us, I peeled off and I'm still executive producing the first season. And also I have, there's some other projects that are just matriculating at different speeds than I maybe estimated, over the last year.
Mm.
But it is Chris and Steph show running now. And I believe they are shooting it as we speak.
Mm. Very
They're probably
cool.
wrapped for the day, not literally, but they're in Chicago shooting the show, which is crazy. It was a pretty wild year and a half on that one.
Now, is like asking yourself, like what do I want to do, and taking it's I find that very cool that you had the clarity enough to do that, because I feel like so many people face burnout
Yes.
creatively, physically, mentally, relationship wise, and everything.
Mhm.
do you see yourself keeping on going with the comic book creating?
Absolutely. I think that, I mean, you bring up burnout, and that's such a huge thing, and it's a huge thing across the board in I think every
Mhm.
walk of human life at this point in 2021. But the entertainment industry is a unique beast in that way, and just on a personal psychology level, I mean, I practice Zen Buddhism, and there's
Mhm.
a Roshi, a teacher at the Upaya Zen Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico, named Joan Halifax. And Joan Halifax wrote a book called Edge States, and edge states are persistent places of mental operation and emotional operation that only should be accessed during crisis.
Mhm.
So you do that enough, and you end up in these edge states where you essentially it's burnout, right? Where you become depleted and you can't actually help other people or yourself in crisis states. And so in high octane situations, especially in the entertainment industry or what have you, or now put the pandemic in there and homeschooling kids and all this stuff.
Mhm.
And I think was in a major kind of edge state. And I needed to back up and go, whoa, I don't want I don't I can't operate in the same gear in the next 10 years of my life. If I'm turning 40 this year, and I turned 30 when we sold Halt and Catch Fire, 2 weeks before we sold it, I turned 30.
Mhm.
Um, you know, if I'm turning 40 now, I can't operate in the same gear that I've been operating this last decade, or I'm not going to make it to 50, right? I'm
Mhm.
going to
Right,
crash
right,
off
right. Yeah.
the side of the road. I'm going to roll the car,
Mhm.
and so I'm going to go right into a cornfield. So I think it was that reevaluation period of like, what do I want the next 10 years to look like? And I get a lot of questions of, if you had to choose between TV and film and comic books, what would you choose? And my measured answer is I love both mediums, which is true, and I would love to continue to work in both as I'm doing now. But God, I love comic books. I mean that it is a little simpler than that kind of complex canned answer I can give, which is I really love writing them. I love the small creative feedback loop between the editor, the artist, the color, the colorist, the letterer. Um, I love the imprints. I mean, from soup to nuts. I mean, I'm working with a lot of labels right now, from small to Marvel, and it's a great group of people in every little email chain I'm in, and I am bummed about, not seeing folks at conventions, because that's actually it's where Martine Morazzo and I, got to meet each other in person after
Mhm.
working together for a year, and I'm hoping that picks up soon now that we're all getting vaccinated, because I want to see these people again. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. I mean, Karen Berger always has like a cool dinner at in San Diego every year, and it's
Mhm.
always, you show up and you get to hang out with, Andy Nascenti, and you know who knows who else, and it's always a blast. So I love the people. I love the quality of the work. It is a medium that um, doesn't seem to have so much pretense to it. Of course, it can be
Mhm.
there, but it also is full of people who are, even the misguided ones, zealots and lovers of the medium itself, right? Very few people, I feel like, last in comics, or feel like they have the attitude or patience for comics, because it's not such a lucrative business anymore,
Mhm.
that are just total snake oil salespeople, right?
For sure.
It's just strange to really find someone like that. The closest you get maybe is these kind of IP farm imprints that are out there to
Mhm.
generate stuff to option, and pay people work for hire, that are complete and absolute bullshit. But like, those things are such small little sectors of what largely, including the big two, a lot of people, a lot of geeky people who have a lot of guileless passion for wonderful, wonderful, fantastical storytelling and art. And God, I can't. It's what a rarefied group of people. I feel so lucky to be a part of that group and that ecosystem.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Like you said, a lot of things that kind of hit home, especially with like just the way I view comics too, where it's like comics are great, they're fun, you can't help but love them, especially kind of like even if you didn't grow up with them, and you meet somebody who's like, hey, listen, like I had a great interaction a couple of years ago. I picked up a copy of the Mr. Miracle the Tom King, Mitch Gerard's Mr.
I have it
Miracle.
on my desk over there. Yeah, it's one of the most
Great.
important books I've read. Yeah.
Picked it up for my wife. We went to a coffee shop. We were talking about it, and the barista was like, "Are you guys talking about Mr. Miracle?" And we're like,
Oh,
"Yeah."
nice.
I just picked it up for my wife, etc. I'm trying to get her into like this kind of different storytelling, even though it's superhero-y and all the blah, blah, blah. And she was like, "That's the first comic I ever read.
Wow.
Somebody gave it to me. I felt completely seen, and I felt completely heard with what Scott Free was going through."
Oh,
And
that's
I was like, how great is that? From like that fan's perspective. And it must be awesome to just be in the thick of it, picking creators' brains and that share this guy, like you said, guileless passion for this art form.
yeah. Yeah, I think it and it's just such a must in terms of qualifications for the industry and success in the industry. I feel like it's that. I mean, a lot of these people I haven't even gotten to meet in person yet, but
Mhm.
like talking to people online, just trading jokes with Sean Tormey or talking to or commenting on a movie that Zach Thompson just saw, and James Tiny and like Kelly Thompson, all these people like exchanging DMs and information,
Mhm.
sharing PDFs of new work, reaching out and saying like bothering Jorge Fornes, like every 4 months and saying, can we work together on this? And he's like, I'm busy, I want to, but just like kind of the ritual of it is so great. It's kind of like everybody is part of this community. And we're also like kind of all in on the gag of like, we're all doing like, quote unquote, four color funny books. Right. And it's not blood plasma, right? Which
Yeah.
one of my bosses at Disney used to say, even in Disney marketing, right? He was an SVP, wonderful human being, another
Mhm.
mentor in my life, used to say, we're not making blood plasma. And it's important to remember that. But the best books like Mr. Miracle sometimes feel like emotional blood plasma if you pull it off, right? At the very least, you give someone 20 minutes to step away from the chaos of their own lives and their own brain. And even if they go, oh, it was all right, they turn that off for a second. That's how I feel. And at the most, I mean, you're getting to stuff that people dream about in their sleep, like Fourth World and Kirby work, and I mean, you're getting to like intense stuff that is really, really potent and lasting to the kind of collective unconsciousness.
That's a perfect statement. Also, like kind of going with what I'm going to say next. I every episode I feel like I say this every episode of this show. Comics now are kind of an embarrassment of riches,
They are. Yeah,
and
that's true.
like I want to ask you, like, do you think this is kind of like do you think we're entering in like a new golden age? Specifically, I'm gonna piggyback off of the creators you mentioned, sharing DMs with all these other people who are putting out great work. Like, do you think we're entering this like insane golden age in 2021 of comic books?
Well, it's I don't know, like golden age. Golden Age is thrown around a lot in TV too, right? Because like I feel like Halt was like kind of walked in the door right as the room was emptying out of that second golden age of Mad Men and Breaking Bad, and we kind of had to find ourselves in the hinterlands that followed before streamers, but after this kind of reinvention of cable television and prestige television that started with, and premium cable that started with, The Sopranos, and even a couple of shorts before that. Um, what I love is that there's a comic book for everybody now. Well, how cool is that? I mean, I got to experience that somewhat in TV. I mean, the fact that someone even listens to the pitch of Halt and Catch Fire because there had been a Mad Men, because there had been a Breaking Bad, because there had been these other shows, that someone was able to consider what, if you look at it on paper, as a very provincial kind of premise, through which then you tell a universal human story. But obviously, it's that kind of initial landing pad that you need to get everybody to kind of congregate around and then take them inside. Comics are very much the same way. I mean, there's just so many great books. And yes, I mean, sometimes people say, oh, it's just the noise, and cutting through the noise of that is very difficult. And it is, you know what I mean? Because it is not you know, it's not just DC and Marvel, right?
Right.
And here's the 8 folks that we're following. And it's got to sell 100,000 units or we're just going to shut it down, right?
Mm.
Like, you don't have to do that anymore. And I think that's actually kind of an amazing blessing. Even my first book, She Could Fly, which was tiny, you know, tiny, you know, in terms of sales numbers, the people who found it and gravitated towards it, it really spoke to them. I mean, I was happened to be in Venice, California, and I walked into a shop out there, and or actually it was in Culver City, and I was walking around, and the sales girl, the clerk, had put out volume 2 of She Could Fly on kind of one of those display racks,
Mm.
and the book's been out for like 2 years, and you know, sometime it depends on how I'm feeling, but I'll be like, oh, I'll sign a few issues of something because I always want to help the local shops move
Yeah.
books, right, for them, not for me. So I'll sign some things. But she found out who I was. She didn't care about Iron Man. She wanted to talk about She Could Fly, which was great, you know. And that to me is so incredibly meaningful. You know, Halt is the same way in terms of its fan base.
That's pretty cool, you know. And like, it's also cool that you're kind of, you know, you're giving back to the shops, and you're not turning around and going, why aren't more of these on the shelf? You know.
Well, yeah, exactly. Put this up here. Well, I mean, what the best feeling when I walk into a shop is when you can't find my book, because that means they sold out. Right? If there's like huge stack, I'm like, oh God, you know, like, what happened? No one likes it. Everyone hates me. But yeah. And I always toy that. I never want to be like, hey, I'm the writer of Iron Man. But I like to help the shops out and have them sell units. They mark up books with my name. I don't care. Like, I went over to Heidi Ho, I think last month, and there was a Doctor Doom #1 in kind of the dollar bin. I was going through the dollar bin myself just for fun to see what back issues I could find. There was a Doctor Doom #1. I was like, did you want me to sign this? And that way you could put it somewhere and sell it for however much as opposed to $1. Just because I want to help them out. I mean, Heidi Ho moved, I think, 3 times in the last 15 years. And then, you know, they had their storefront destroyed last year during the protests and stuff, which they were amazing about in terms of solidarity with the community and the protests, and then also a GoFundMe to, like, you know, help them repair their front windows. But I mean, that all costs money, man. That overhead costs are real for stores. So yeah, I try to be there wherever I can. I got to participate in my first retailer call for Blue Flame. Vault actually had me and Adam and Kurt be a part of that, which was super cool to just talk to store owners from across the country. It was neat.
That is pretty cool, you know. And there's like, I'm a big supporter of, like, you know, local comic shops, you know. Like, I'm super dedicated to mine, even though it's like a 25-minute drive, and
it's a drive. Yep,
it's a drive, but I used to work there in college, and I've maintained a relationship with everybody there, and I have to. That's my story, you know.
That's, again, it's the guileless love of it. I found out that when I was making the trek from downtown LA, when I was going to USC, all the way out to Golden Apple's location around the year 2001, that Jerry Duggan was probably working there in the store when I was going there. He was working there. So it's like, that's awesome, right? I mean, like, that shows you the love of the medium more than anything else. It's worth more than its weight in gold.
Absolutely. I interviewed Phil Hester a couple of weeks ago, and his, just like paraphrase him, he was like, even if I wasn't an artist, I would be involved in comics in some form or fashion, if it's selling them, talking about them, or whatever, you know. I think that's awesome. I love talking to like creators who feel that love and passion. The first thing I read of yours was Everything.
And that's amazing. Yeah, I rarely talk about a small book. No one ever asked me about that book, but that's very cool. Yeah,
it's such a good book, and it really, again, like, it really hooked me. Like, I'm a sucker. Like, I was the kid. Maybe you can relate to this. I was the kid who'd go to the library, obviously pre-internet, you know, we're gonna be 40 this year, who would look at the sci-fi and fantasy novels and be like, oh, that's a cool cover, let me read it. And you know, sometimes it's not the best book. But I remember going to the comic store and being like, oh, what's this all about? Sight unseen, just picked it up and was like, oh, this is great. Went back for more, you know. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, he's writing Doctor Doom, he's writing Iron Man. I got to compliment you on the Doctor Doom series, because that
Oh,
was
thank you.
one of the. I'm gonna nerd out for a minute. It was one of my wife loves comics. She's not a fan of the big two. She just doesn't care for the superhero
Understood.
stuff, right?
Well, that happens. That happens. Yeah.
That Doctor Doom book was every issue I would go up to her like a kid and be like, "Oh, read this panel. Check this out," you know.
That's
But
good.
you
Awesome.
know, my compliments to the chef on that one.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, I got a couple of more questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
Cool, man. What is the sandwich of your dreams?
You know that they asked me this question on Gate Crashers. So one, you got to take it up with Gate Crashers because they got a sandwich question too.
Oh,
But I was
buddy.
actually thinking about this. I will give you a different answer than the. Okay, here I'll give you one.
Okay.
Oh, I gotta find. I'm gonna look it up on my phone right now just so I can actually plug the place.
How-
Speaking of your local comic book store,
Yes.
So I go to Four Color Fantasies in Rancho Cucamonga. So I live out in the Inland Empire, and I go further east for my books because a guy named Chris Brady owns a store out there called Four Color Fantasies, and I love it. It's a great store. He kept it very when he was able to reopen during the pandemic. He completely reorganized the store in a way that encouraged social distancing and all of that stuff. He provided just very easy access to sanitation stations and all this. It was one of the few places, except for when our numbers out here spiked so bad in the fall and winter, where I felt comfortable taking my sons. It's one of the first places I ended up taking them. Before the grocery store, I would take them just to take them somewhere, to Four Color. And there's a deli that is catty corner to them on, so they're on Archibald and Foothill, which is AKA Route 66. And let's see, there's a deli right there that is called Deli. Let's see if I find it. It's so good. Oh yeah, no, it's called the Deli. It is. It's called the Deli. The deli's been there forever, and it's outdoors, so I loved it. And they do a muffaletta sandwich that is just huge and amazing and incredible. And I will eat half of it. I will buy one and then be like, I'm just gonna eat half, and I'll save the half for later. But I usually eat half in the car on the drive back home, which is 25 minutes. And then by the time I get home, I'm like, I'm still hungry a little bit. And then I do the second half. And then I have to just drink water the rest of the day because the sodium content in my blood is like, right, it's just huge. But that place is great. It's just called the Deli, and it's on Foothill Boulevard in Rancho Cucamonga on Route 66.
That's awesome. That's also that's a great sandwich. Chris, where can everybody find you, and what do you want everybody to check out now?
Boy, let's see. Well, I mean, you can find me on Twitter. That's the easiest place, probably the only place. At if you Cantwell, which is how my dad tells people how to spell our last names, which is if you can't, well. So that's my Twitter handle. I'm there. My wife, Elizabeth, who's also on Twitter at EC Cantwell. She and I have a podcast called Spores, Molds, and Fungus. That's about obsessive. It's about obsessive topics, things that we're obsessing about that week. We started it during the pandemic, and we put a few episodes in the can. We just started releasing it. We have 2 episodes of that out. So that's on Apple Podcasts. And then I've got my books. I've got Iron Man, which took a month off this month because of Heroes Reborn. There were never any Avengers, but then he's back next month. Although it's not him, it's a solo Korvac story in issue 9, and then an amazing 2-issue Iron Man solo tale set in deep space that I'm very excited about. Just Tony. And some other cool characters. And then United States of Captain America #1 comes out June 2nd. Very excited. It's the 5-issue miniseries that I'm doing with a plethora of people, incredible people. Very happy to be a part of that book. And then Blue Flame #1. #1 tomorrow, meaning May 26th, when this comes out. Get your orders in for #2. Which will hit in June, and that's a 10-issue. It's a 10-issue series, so that'll be pretty fun. That's my stuff.
Right on, dude. And you know, it's
Awesome.
funny. Like I'm gonna check out your podcast that you do with your wife. It's very, and I kid you not, this morning I was crossing the street and I got a buzzing in the back of my head, and that buzzing just said Egon Spengler. I don't know why. I don't know why. I was like, why am I
That's
thinking about
incredible.
Egon?
You might want to get that checked out. I don't know, but also it's awesome.
Yeah, it's like why did that just pop into my head? It's a little foreshadowing, I guess, of hearing
Here's
about your
my
podcast.
here's my controversial Ghostbusters opinion. Here's my one fan thing I'll contribute to your podcast,
Okay.
which is okay. So if you recut Ghostbusters 2, you don't not picture, keep the picture the same. If you
Mm-hmm.
took Elmer Bernstein's score from the first movie
Mm-hmm.
and you cut it into the second movie, it would improve the second movie by a power of 5 to 10. I really think that if you just put the Elmer Bernstein score in that movie and removed the score from Ghostbusters 2 that's in there, which is very much a victim of like 1989, like right before we hit the 90s, everything was kind of easy listening boomer sounding. We're the thing that made Kurt Cobain go fuck this, that sound. Pull that out of Ghostbusters 2, put in Elmer Bernstein, movies instantly even better.
I want somebody to do it. If somebody's watching this,
I
and
bet you somebody has done it,
oh
and
my
then is
god,
also a terrible person.
oh no, right? Like,
Yeah, you're like, oh god, yeah,
it looks and sounds cool, but the worst person alive made this thing.
yeah, that sounds about right for the internet.
Dude, thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna close it out. Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it.
Thanks, dude. Chris is a cool dude, man. I'm very shocked and honored that he took the time out to talk to me. He's a busy guy. He's got a lot of projects going on. I'm excited. Marvel did a bit of a switcheroo this week. It's still fresh news, if you can call it that, even though when this goes out there this weekend to all you guys, it's going to be old news, I guess, even though it's a few days old. But looks like we're getting Donnie Cates on Hulk, and we're getting Al Ewing and Ron V on Venom. I like that switcheroo there. Marvel's doing a bit of a shuffle, which I think is like super cool, man. I'm really liking it. Some more comic news this week. Netflix didn't renew Jupiter's Legacy. Instead, they're taking that money, I guess, and putting it towards another Millerverse project. What did you guys think of Jupiter's Legacy? Did you even watch it? I know several comic fans who did not know it was on Netflix and or could care less. Books of the week: Immortal Hulk, always fantastic. I think this week was issue 47. I hope I'm right about that. A few issues to go till the finale, and then Ewing doing Gamma Flight. This story is bananas. I feel like I want this to get collected in like a big edition, like a big compendium with all the Alex Ross covers, with all the variant covers, and the story is, this is one of my favorite Hulk stories of all time, I gotta say. Really amazing. The art is superb. What a horrific book. This week also was the last issue of Family Tree. I suggest you guys check it out. 12-issue miniseries from Image, from Jeff Lemire, in front of the show, Phil Hester. Batman, fantastic this week. Really continuing that fear-based Gotham story with nods to Future State. Tynion is doing such a fantastic job, and I think he's really hitting his flow state as like a writer. And speaking of which, my book of the week is The Nice House on the Lake. I believe it's a 12-issue miniseries coming out from DC Black Label. That first issue rocked. It rocked me. It was fantastic. It was awesome. It was every positive word you can use to describe a comic book. Great imaginative horror book. I don't know why I feel like it's a little, I shouldn't say it's more prestigious being on the DC Black Label, but I think DC consciously took a look at what Tynion is doing on the indies and said, hey, listen, let's do this together. Let's see how it goes. We're gonna attach the carriage to you for the most part. As far as this goes, very unique story. This is one of those things where I'm not gonna go into it too much, but I really want you guys to pick it up, just to see for yourself. Especially if you like horror, if you like well-written stories. This is a very unique take on an apocalypse story, and I think you guys would really dig it. And, a special mention to Heroes Reborn this week, which was a Nighthawk issue. I feel like a lot of people are a little hot and cold on the series, but I'm really digging it. It's fun. I like really well-written Squadron Supreme stuff, and I feel like we haven't really seen anything since that Straczynski run quite some time ago. But that's it for this week, guys. We're gonna have a new interview next week, and the week after that, and the week after that, and some more surprises, guys. Hope to see you soon. Don't forget to gently smush that like button and that subscribe button. You can see this on the BTC Rich X channel, and you can follow me at BTC Rich on Twitter. I will see you soon. Mwah.